Phew, pretty fast, huh? Well, I'm not always quite that speedy. In fact, sometimes it takes me a long time to come up with an idea. It's all part of a little thing called the creative process. You also go through the creative process when you're handed a pencil and a blank piece of paper. What are you going to put on that paper? That's what cartooning's all about. And that's what I do for a living. I'm Jim Davis, and I created Garfield. You know what? I have the greatest job in the world, and it all started when I was a young boy. When I was a kid, we didn't have video games and computers for entertainment. I mostly relied on books and my imagination when I was bored. My mom would hand me a pencil and a piece of paper and tell me to entertain myself. My first drawings were pretty bad, but I got better with practice. And somewhere along the way, I discovered it was fun to make little pictures and put words with them. So I decided to be a cartoonist. And then one day, as I was staring at a blank piece of paper, I drew a cat. A big, fat, grouchy cat. I called him Garfield because he kind of reminded me of my grandpa, James A. Garfield Davis. And the rest, as they say, is history. How would you like to learn to draw Garfield? Tell you what, I'll teach you to draw Garfield. Deal? Let's go. Let's draw Garfield in motion. The important thing to remember with motion is to get everything moving in the same direction. As long as you think action and direction, you're going to be just fine, okay? Here's Garfield walking. So we get everything moving forward. He's looking forward. He's leaning forward. And everything's moving in the same direction. Look at this. We're going to take the body and move it out behind here. See, now like here is the center line of gravity, but everything's behind him and he's moving this way. So here he is with the arms swinging. It never hurts to go ahead and stand up and walk yourself and try to capture this kind of emotion. Okay, here he is, walking forward. Now, a couple of cartoon indications, okay? Here, we throw in some action lines, and that shows that he's moving forward. And also, that we do this shading underneath to show what area is right directly under his body. So this is Garfield walking. Another important concept to understand is also what we call squash and stretch. Now this is where you actually take the character out of proportion, but for some reason in cartooning it looks just fine. What we're going to do here is draw Garfield reaching for a piece of pie. Now, you know his arms are basically this length right here. Okay? Now on a squash and stretch, we'll take this far arm and we draw it real long because he's reaching for this piece of pie. There he goes. Now even though that arm is much longer than it should be, it looks okay in cartooning because he's reaching. In fact, let's do this. Let's go ahead and put him up on his toes. All right? That makes him even longer when he's reaching for that piece of pie. And again, we do the tail out here. So, and the shading underneath. There he is reaching for a piece of pie. Now, a real big piece of action. This is Garfield running. Now, you know Garfield's got to be excited, so we're going to make him with open eyes when he's running. In fact, we'll even do his mouth open here. Sometimes I work in a mirror when I'm working on some of these just to see what he's going to look like when he's running. Again, with all the motion, look how his ears go back in the wind. And again, you have to think about every piece of action. His fists are clenched, and his body goes way back like this. And his arm goes out in front, like that. And we get his legs up real high. Now, again, we're really exaggerating this running motion. But it's going to look very natural when it's in cartooning. Now, when a character is running, they're usually off the ground. So we're going to put the shading all the way underneath. Now, to give even a bigger feeling of motion here, we're going to give them action lines and maybe even one of these dust clouds on the back. And we can even do a dust cloud underneath when he stirs up dust when he's running. And another thing I like to do with Garfield, look at this, we'll bend the whiskers to get the action. And when a cat runs or a dog runs, little hairs come off the back. They're always shedding. And that gives even a bigger feeling of action. So he's really moving forward. He's really excited. There's a lot of energy in a drawing like this. Now let's go exactly the opposite direction. We're going to do Garfield totally without motion. But again, to me, this is a motion drawing. This is one of my favorites. This is Garfield sound asleep or totally bored. We're going to employ a little trick here called foreshortening. This is turning the head up so far that you don't even see the eyes. Got a big tummy here. Everything's laying flat, by the way, on this line right down here. So his arms are resting right beside him, and you've got the legs resting on the ground, big toes, like this. And this is Garfield resting. Now we get everything going along the floor line here, even the tail. And here we'll move the whiskers up here. Totally bored, really rested. And sometimes here, for an effect, we'll go ahead and do this little sound effect. Garfield, sound asleep. That's always fun. He's very funny in this position. Okay, you've seen Garfield in motion. Give it a try yourself. Have fun. Let's draw some Garfield expressions. You know, expressions really are one of the most fun parts of the cartooning. Again, I work in a mirror, and I'm going to draw Garfield happy here, okay? When he's happy, look at this. The mouth comes all the way up around the eyes. See that? And let's see, he's excited here too. And that is simply happy. He looks happy all over. All right? Now, let's do the opposite of this one, and let's do sad. Sometimes I draw the outline of the face, and then I draw the eyes. Now, sad takes this kind of an expression, okay? Look at that. Aww. And his mouth droops down like that. And everything kind of droops, even the ears. Look at this. The ears droop down. And then everything sags. Everything's sad from that point. So always remember this. This is a very important thing. All right? Now, let's draw him angry, and we're going to go the opposite direction with those eyes. When it's angry, they come down very sharply and up. Look in the mirror sometime. Your eyes will do this too. And then the mouth really curls down. All right? Look at that. That's angry. And on a cat, watch a cat who's getting ready to have a fight. The ears turn back. In fact, let's go ahead and take this another step and do them even angrier yet. Look at this. We can do sharp teeth. Look at that. Now, he's really upset and he's getting ready to fight. So let's do a variation off the happy. Let's say he got caught in the act of eating a piece of pie that he wasn't supposed to have, and John catches him, all right? This is sort of sheepish here. Now, he says big teeth right there. He's trying to look innocent, but he really is guilty. That's one of my favorite expressions. Garfield gets caught in the act a lot. That's what that looks like. All right. Now, let's do scared. When he's scared, again, the eyes are open, but look what happens to the pupils of the eyes. They get real small. They float right in the middle of the eyes, and the mouth gets real small, too. So he just saw a ghost, or he just saw a very big dog. Not happy about that. Now let's do the classic Garfield expression. Here's one where he's always thinking something naughty. He's got that real attitude in his expression. He'd like to be pushing Odie off the table or something. This is his wise guy expression. This is the one you've seen most often. Classic Garfield. Why don't you try some expressions? Have a good time. Sounds are a very important part of cartooning. Let's play with some Garfield sounds. Sound effects are one of the real tricks of the trade. We call it onomatopoeia, and those are words that sound like sounds, and they really do help embellish the cartoon and explain the action. Now, we're going to do some actions, and I'm going to put some words with it here when we get done. One of my favorites is when Garfield gets hit in the face with a pie, okay? Here's the edge of a pie, and when Garfield gets hit, this pie goes like that. It really splatters, all right? Now, Garfield is back here somewhere. You'll have to trust me. Here are fingers. You know, see how his body goes this way? He's really getting hit hard with this pie here. All right. All right. This pie's coming in like this. All right. There's Garfield getting hit with a pie. And the sound effect we use with this one is splut. In fact, I like splut so well. We've even had splut weeks. Every day gets hit with a different kind of a pie. Now let's use a more subtle kind of a sound effect, okay? Here's one Garfield uses a lot too. So this is what he does right after a meal. Puts his hand over his mouth like this. I'm not going to give this one away. Just had a big meal. I have to tell you, Garfield is not very nice in this respect. But he goes, burp. Just like that. How many times does that happen to us? Okay, here's another fun one. This is one of Garfield's favorite things to do. This is not very nice. I get some mail occasionally about this because he's not very nice. He hates spiders. Here he is. His fists are clenched. He's really leaning forward. And he's got a newspaper like this. And a big action line, okay? And this is splat. Poor spider, look at here. Here are little tiny legs coming out there. The spider never fares very well when Garfield's around him with a newspaper. That's an easy sound effect. Okay, we're going to go to a little tougher sound effect now. This is what Garfield does absolutely best. First, we have to draw this great big mouth. Get it open just as much as we can, like this, okay? And then we're going to draw a whole blur of arms, like this, okay? Can you guess what he's doing yet? Watch this. I'm going to make you guess. There's his ears back here. Here is his food bowl. And he is eating. Now here, rather than making a lot of eating sounds, we use a lot of descriptive terms. And this really helps a lot. We use, let's see, gulp smack. We can pick up burp, gobble, snarf, and anything you can think of that has anything to do with eating. Eat, that's always fun. And so these words are all real funny, but they help to describe this whole action of Garfield eating. So those are sound effects, and that's called onomatopoeia. Make up some of your own words. What would it sound like if you slipped on a banana? Have fun.